So we have well, actually, he isn't new. He's been around for a while, for a minute, I'll say. He's been around. So, Georgia Senate hopeful Herschel Walker has seemingly never lived in the state. New evidence reveals. So, this is out of Blavity News. Kui Maui. And so, for those of you that are trying to figure out who this is, let's see here. Herschel Walker. Okay. We have them in every culture where someone wants to represent Republican. Um, they want to be a politician. They have all this rhetoric and they claim that they're going to come out and they're going to make changes and they're going to do something having to do within regard to the right wing group. So, throughout the duration of his Senate campaign, Herschel Walker has claimed that he has deep ties to the state that he's hoping to represent in Washington, Georgia. In Washington. Okay, so Georgia. But it turns out, Georgia, but it turns out the 60-year-old may be embellishing his connection to the state. So, according to the Daily Beast, Walker has been living in Texas. He's been living there for decades. So he has said, however, that he has maintained residence in Atlanta for over a decade. So it turns out that the residency that he claims to have isn't actually his. According to Fulton County Tax and Property Records, Walker's wife, Julie Blanchard, is the sole owner of the residence. So the rental income, the data also shows that Blanchard collected anywhere between 15,000 to 50,000 from the home. So she's the one that actually lives there. So Walker, he deemed Blanchard's Georgia home as his when he had first announced his senatorial bid last August. So in addition, last year Blanchard's company received an unreported $49,997 in COVID relief funds at Walker's Texas address. So the Georgia State or Georgia Senate hopeful said that the company had provided rental income for Blanchard, and which may indicate that the company had an operational stake in the Atlanta residence. So Walker's name is nowhere to be found on the home's deed and other documentation that go along with it. So this information suggested that Herschel Walker may have never lived in the Atlanta residence. So he certainly did not live at the home before his campaign. So it appears as though the residence was only used as a means of passive income. So Walker's residency has been up for debate well before he had announced his run for Georgia Senate. So he claimed that he was Texan through and through when Donald Trump paved the way for him to run against Senator Raphael Warnock, who is a Democrat of Georgia. So in 2022. So he registered to vote in Georgia just days before his campaign announcement. And so the tides have turned as of late, and now Herschel Walker has really leaned into sharing his upbringing in Wrightsville, a small town in central Georgia. So the public also hearing more and more about his stint as a football player at the University of Georgia. But the damning evidence doesn't end there. According to CNN, Walker filed for a homestead exemption on his Dallas, Texas residence. This was in both 2021 and 2022, which caused him to find himself in a tricky situation with tax law in Texas and election law in Georgia. So the exemption afforded Walker a 1,500 tax break. So, however, it required him to declare his suburban Dallas home as his principal residence. And so, the last year, Georgia Election officials investigated Blanchard after they had speculated she improperly cast a ballot in the state while claiming to reside in Texas, the Daily Beast reports. So she was cleared of those accusations. But ahead of the runoff battle, December 6th, suspicious about Walker's residency in Georgia are raging on. And so that's pretty much the article. So he might have some things that he might have to look at before he starts claiming what state he's going to represent. So it looks like it could turn into a big mess. So we shall see. This is a developing story about Herschel Walker, a Republican pundit, and we will see how this ends or how it begins. How it ends, I would say, how it ends. And it doesn't look like it's going to end pretty good if you ask me. It look like he's got some explaining to do, and you know what I do know is that you have to be residing at the place that you claim that you're representing. I do know that much. If I don't know anything else, that you have to be residing at the place that you are representing. So you can't be somebody that you claim to be from from a place, but you actually don't live there, and you claim you want to represent it, and so that might stand in the way of his credibility. Uh, it looks like there's a lot of flies in the net, so we will see how this develops.